The American School for the Deaf was the first deaf school in the country, founded in 1817, but because of segregation, black students were not admitted until 1952. However, with the success of American School of the Deaf, Southern states began to create separate schools or departments for black deaf children. At these schools, they had no connection with their white counterparts, and with this isolation, a different dialect began to develop. The realization of a different American Sign Language, or ASL, came after the decision in Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. Students like Carolyn McCaskill noticed this distinction with integration in schools started happening. Dr. Carolyn McCaskill, who is currently a professor at Gallaudet University and the head of the Center for Black Deaf Students, was 15 when her school began to integrate, and she noticed she could not understand her peers or her teachers, and they could not understand the sign language she was using. Black American Sign Language was taught to the black students at their school, which had little to no correlation with the ASL used by teachers and students at the white schools. Black American Sign Language can be seen as its own language, although some believe it is just a dialect of American Sign Language. Black ASL, it's its own language. It is a mix of, well, I'm comparing two different things. Black ASL and American Sign Language is different. Black ASL started with a group of people who kind of like established it. There hasn't had a change of impact on me personally.
About the origin of Black ASL is that for a certain time period in history, they didn't want ASL taught in schools because they believed that the oral route, or having them learn how to lip read and, cute speech and all that, they encouraged that. But later they started incorporating ASL back into the classroom. But unfortunately it was a time period where it was segregation. So there was the separation of the black students from the white students. So without access to the same teachers and professors and technology that the white students had, they didn't really have a way of communicating with or learning more sign language with the white students. So they kind of took what they knew and they developed their own language, and that's still kind of a thing today. And the main difference I can tell between white ASL and black ASL is that in black ASL the gestures are more large. There's a greater radius in which they use a space. Meanwhile, white ASL it's more like smaller, more compact.
The ASL was created. It is because it was from a group of people, and they are all deaf. But it's amongst the deaf community. The deaf community overall includes a wide variety of races, but they are separating the black community, the oppressed community, the oppressed from the system. The concept of white being better than black. So they have, in a sense, separate themselves so they can develop their own language and their own cultures amongst the system, in this racist system that we live in. It seems a little bit more diverse now. I've noticed more diversity within the community, more black deaf filmmakers. For example, there was a deaf girl who was in a movie recently. In the movie Creed, the third version of Creed, that example, there's a black deaf actor in the movie. So there's diversity that we see more. But in the past, you didn't really see much with black deaf people in the movies. In films, a lot of times, like when Black Lives Matter happened, there was a lot of people who kind of, in a sense, went into their shell. And then when the movement happened, they came out of their shell to be more involved, being editors, being filmmakers, and finally being able to step into the career. My experience with Instagram, social media, I noticed that they have expanded so much, especially with their marketing, being able to find people. So being able to find my identity in the social media world has helped me grow as well. In the past, there was not as much, but now it's so easily accessible. It is important that Black ASL, they have their own perception. They have their own values that they cherish. How they live. The journeys has influenced the culture and also the language, which essentially means like over generations, they have made the separation to create their own communities, to support each other, to cherish each other, value each other, and so then one another. And say, for example, there's a Black person who goes out and they're around other white people. Their sign may be a little bit different. It's very typical for white people to criticize their signing that they're using, but essentially the Black people feel like they have to adjust, that they are wrong. But in actuality, the white people, the white native signers, should be the ones who accept their language and ask them where that came from, the origin of that. And so they should be learning instead of criticizing what they're doing right versus what they're doing wrong. As far as the Black culture, they have a habit of approaching white culture and feeling like they are being scrutinized. My most important message is that white people need to be more supportive of Black ASL and the Black Deaf Sign language.